Hi, this is Ranger Jonah with DeKalb County, and I'm here sitting in front of my house thinking about something that you don't want to touch. You know what that is, right? Poison ivy. Well, I'm thinking about poison ivy because a lot of people ask me about it at this time of year, and you may have seen it, or you might have seen something that's a poison ivy lookalike. Have you ever heard the phrase, leaves of three, leave it be? Well, there's several different plants that have leaves of three, so you have to get to know the poison ivy. And I'm going to show you a few tips for identifying it and for making sure you're not looking at one of its lookalikes. So right over here, I have one of its lookalikes growing in my yard. And we'll look at this little small vine here growing up the fence next to my neighbor's yard. Do you see these plants right here? Well, first of all, the leaf shape looks a lot like poison ivy, but count the leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This young one has just 4 leaves, and sometimes you'll see just 3 when it's really, really young. But this plant is Virginia creeper. It's a vine. It grows in almost all the same habitats and ecological zones that poison ivy grows, but it has 5 leaves. So the first thing you can do is just count the leaves and know that leaves of 3, leave it be. I don't have any poison ivy in my yard, but my neighbor has something that also is a poison ivy lookalike. Let's walk right over here and see what it is. All right, this one right here also has leaves of 3. Do you see it? 1, I'm blocking it with this. There we go, 1, 2, 3. Leaves of 3, leave it be. But if you look closer, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this with my camera. Can you see that this has small spikes or thorns, prickles all over it? Poison ivy will not have that. If it has thorns or prickles on it, it's not poison ivy, and it's likely some kind of bramble. In this case, it's blackberry. And you will find blackberry also growing in similar areas that you might find poison ivy. But again, look at the stalk. Don't touch it. Look at it, and if it has prickles on it and not hairs, then it's probably a bramble and not a poison ivy. All right, let's see. We've seen 2 lookalikes now. I think we can go check out some poison ivy. I'm gonna turn off the camera and I'll be back in just a moment. I was on my way to the poison ivy and I see something else that's a lookalike. Let's take a look at it. This is just growing in another neighbor's yard. And if we get down real close, you can see it also has leaves of 3. Looks a lot like poison ivy, in fact. But on this one, there are 2 things to look for. First of all, it's a seedling. So it kind of looks like it could be a vine. It's not a vine. And if it's not a vine, it's not poison ivy. The other thing is, when you hear the phrase leaves of 3, leave it be, it actually should be leaflets of 3, because each one of these groupings of 3 leaflets, like this one, is actually this is 1 leaf. 3 leaflets make up a leaf. And in this particular case, we look at how do these leaflets come out of the stalk. With poison ivy, they come out alternate. 1, 2, 1, 2 on either side. But here, do you see how they're opposite? So look at these 2 leaflets and see how the stalk comes out from exactly the same point on either side. So we know from those particular aspects that this is a box elder tree. Well, it's just a seedling right now, but it's one of the main lookalikes that people often get fooled by. We'll probably find more box elders because they grow all over the place. But again, let's go find some poison ivy. I'm not going to get very far, am I? Here's another leaves of 3. This one is not a wild plant, but rather it's a cultivated plant. But it does have leaves of 3. This one, however, is super easy to identify because look at what's growing underneath those leaves. Yep, strawberries. And some of the wild strawberries called mock strawberries that grow around here are oftentimes mistaken for poison ivy. So again, that's not one you're gonna see growing in the wild, but just because it's leaves of 3 doesn't mean it's poison ivy. And now, maybe we can find some poison ivy. Getting close to the poison ivy, but we can do a little test here. We see something that has leaves of 3, but then we look down at the stalk and we see that it is growing opposite, not alternate. That's why I touched it. That's box elder again. Now, I knew there was some poison ivy growing around here somewhere. I'm gonna look around and I'll bring the camera back on, this time with poison ivy. Wouldn't you believe it, after all that walking, I had to pass about 6 other places I wanted to stop and show you lookalikes of poison ivy. But finally, we've come to the actual poison ivy plant. Here we go. Leaves of 3. Leave it be, or rather, leaflets of 3, leave it be. Now, if I don't want to touch this plant, but do you look underneath there, and do you see how those 2 leaflet are alternate? Let's see. See, there's one place, and then there's another. If this was a box elder, they would both come out of the same node on the opposite side. The other thing that you won't be able to see in this video is that there's almost always some hairiness on the stalk. Now these look like they could be seedlings, just like those box elders, but in fact this is a vine that runs underneath the ground in this case. Another thing that you'll notice, and this is something that also has lookalikes, is sometimes there's a little bit of red right in the center of those 3 leaflets. The other thing is that the primary leaflet that comes straight out, not the 2 ones that come out the sides, the primary one has a longer stem than the 2 that are opposite. Sometimes poison ivy can be glossy and shiny. Sometimes it's rather dull like these. Sometimes the leaflets are very small. Sometimes the leaflets are bigger. Sometimes they have very, very clear teeth. And sometimes it's just a faint toothiness to the leaves. But the things that you can definitely do are, is it a vine? Is it hairy? Does it have 3 leaflets? And then also, do the leaflets come out of the stalk opposite or alternate? Those are some really good ways to double check yourself and make sure that you're not looking at a box elder or at a strawberry or a bramble or a Virginia creeper. So those are my tips on looking for poison ivy, but the biggest one is, if you're not 100% sure, don't touch it. Poison ivy can really make you itch. It has oils on it that get on your skin and become really, really irritating. So what happens if you do touch poison ivy by accident or think you might have? Well, do your best and scrub with soap and some kind of exfoliant as much as you possibly can, as soon as you can, and just maybe you'll have gotten those oils off your body. This is Ranger Jonah with DeKalb County, hoping you stay away from poison ivy this summer. And wait for the fall when it starts turning beautiful colors and it's a gorgeous plant to look at. Have a good day and stay safe.